system.
Only if it's easy.
I've had to send this myself because my iPad done.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, thanks very much. Okay, we're now broadcasting. So this is the Safer Community Subcommittee, 27th of June 2022. And so I don't think I need to go through the evacuation procedure. Does everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
Apologies for absence. I've got here two apologies, Councillors Osborne and Councillor Parker. Everybody noted that?
Yeah.
Okay. Disclosable pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. Has anybody got anything to declare? Thank you for that. Minutes of the meeting of the subcommittee held on the 21st of March 2022. Has anybody got any comments about it? Have you all read that? So can I have a proposal to approve those?
Second.
Councillors and seconded by Councillor Jonathan. All those in favour? Thank you very much. And the next item is item 6, North Warwickshire Community Safety Partnership Update. Recommendation to the subcommittee that members consider the update and identify any areas of further scrutiny and consideration, and members note progress of the North Warwickshire Community Safety Partnership Plan for 21-22. Has anybody got any comments?
Sorry.
Councillor President.
I had a few, I've gone through and scribbled lots and lots of comments. And I was, do you want me to send a few at once?
Yeah, helps so.
Yeah, fantastic. So on 6.2 page 6 of 72, 3.5, it talks about community safety partnership delivering projects. And I just wondered what projects, if we can have an update of those.
Page 6, sorry.
Yeah, page 6 of 72.
I was looking at page 6 of 1, but you're looking at the
Yeah.
corner. Yeah.
I think it's 6 of 2, and the bottom one. And then kind of looking at the knife crime and the 14 suspensions. And I've just wondered if we've got any details around what follow-ups come with that. I noticed later on that there's 14 children on acceptable behaviour contracts, whether they're the same 14, whether this is an issue that automatically involves the police, what services are actually supporting those 14 young people, children, to not take knives into school and address the reasons why they think they need to. And carrying on from that, obviously the cohort is that's been looked at has a significant more scrutiny over it, and they're saying that the 14 knives that have been found, or the 14 suspensions around knife crime, is much higher because we are the best detection methods. But I'm kind of wondering what those detection methods are, what the scrutiny is, how long that's going to carry on. Are we sure that that is how many are coming to our schools, and kind of some clarity around the actual situation. Obviously, if we didn't know that there were knives in our school and we've now discovered that there are, how thorough is that search and how can we eliminate it completely? So I'll start there.
Making notes, because you're not going to be surprised to know that I'm not going to be able to answer those questions personally. I'm going to have to refer back to other people. So I'll refer to them to Julie, if possible.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm more than happy to come in talk about these. In terms of the projects, you've got on your partnership plan across all the different areas. There's a number of projects listed in there, and also contained in the report on pages 11 all the way through to pages 14 is an idea of some of the work that's been going on since the last quarter.
So these are the projects that are being funded or being supported by the partnership. That's great.
So that gives you an idea about the projects. In terms of the knife crime, this is something that I have highlighted as possibly something we want to be looking into a little bit further. There's a number of different things going on at the moment, and we do have what we call a serious violence mentoring project, which is working in Hartshill School at the moment. And maybe we might need to extend that to other schools in the area based on some recent knife crime incidences. I think it would be true to say, and again, I think we need to get the facts, but I think it would be true to say because they are doing more detection work, that is why we're actually starting to see the numbers increase. So whether knives were being carried before, we don't know, but because they're physically, doing detection work within schools, then if they're carrying a weapon, of course, they're going to be dealt with. And in this case, exclusions are being made as on a result of that.
Do we know if that automatically involves the police and the criminal prosecution services to get that level of support into the homes and into the families?
I think what we can do, following up from this meeting, is get a summary of exactly what's happening at Hartshill School, because that is particularly the one that we're looking at the moment.
Absolutely.
But there is an awful lot of work and interventions going on at the moment. The police are in there working, they've got drop-ins every single week. There's a number of intervention projects being looked at, from pathways around careers to interventions such as diversionary activities, like getting Aston Villa to come in and work with some of the young people. So depending on the nature and what's going on within the school, they're looking at a variety of different interventions and actions. I think it would be worth getting a summary, and I am aware that we are now starting to see another issue occur as well in the district, in one of the other schools. So around Kingsbury School, there's an issue as well, and it's something that we need to be looking at. The other thing I just think we need to be mindful of is they're not always in school, some of these young people. So you made a really good point about the ABCs and whether these are the same children. They're not actually necessarily the same children. And what we often find is some of these children who get some of these powers or tools that we use around antisocial behaviour put upon them, sometimes they're just young people who maybe are causing a nuisance rather than criminal activity. Where there's a criminal activity, then obviously it's taken far more seriously. And at the moment, I think there is a lot of work going on. The other thing I think I need to say is that in terms of Hartshill School, there will be children within North Warwickshire that have been caught carrying a knife. However, I do need to stress that quite a number of these young people at Hartshill School are from outside of the area, and they are actually from Nuneaton and Bedworth area. So it would probably be worth getting a summary so you can get a feel for the issues that are going on and get a real overview. But I do want to stress as well that some of the information we capture is because its school resides in this area, but the children might not live in the area.
And then Denise wanted to ask something. I was going to put my hand back up, but I think Denise was first. So can I carry on and then we'll...
Yeah, I'm going to respond to it. Go on, carry on.
Okay. It kind of continues, which is why I was hoping to link it together. The school exclusion at the moment, obviously, I understand that some of the children aren't from us, but they are at school with, many of my residents. And I have a caseload, some of which I've referred to Councillor Humphreys, of people who are suspended or excluded or being sent home on a very regular basis from Hartshill School, often without parental support, often literally sent back to the village. And we obviously have concerns that, if one of those children's been found carrying a knife, have they even been disarmed? Presumably they'd be disarmed before being sent home. But I don't obviously want children arriving home unsupervised that have been in those conflict situations. And I also note, and I think this is a really powerful statement, about the fact that there is a weighting towards children on free school meals requiring SEND and with moderate learning difficulties on page 9 of 72. And I just think that that's really key, that these are really vulnerable children who are already being potentially criminalised, or they're feeling the fear, or threat of other people. And I just think it's a really dangerous cycle. You've already mentioned the champions that were coming on too late to the community. Mentors, and I just think, whereas obviously happy to support the scheme, I think it's brilliant. The more input, the better. These are things that I've been talking about in my community with the police for about 3 years now, and saying we have an issue with knife crime, we have an issue with vulnerable children, we have an issue with specific houses being targeted, and it's those people have to have the power to actually do something about it or be listened to, and have to have the kind of the power to be able to get a response. There's no point putting those people in. There's no point kind of supporting the schools unless we've got a response for them. And I think that's really key to actually being able to tackle this.
Denise, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, it was going back a bit like what Jodie was saying about the school statistics. I know I asked this at the last meeting about the us being the highest for exclusions and what we was doing into it. Because my fear is that if they're not in school, where are they? What are they actually up to?
True.
You don't want to know.
Yeah, and I know that Julie said this may work in Anderston. You know, we could give it a try. I'd like to give it a try. You know, if it's working in Artsell, why not give it a try in all the senior schools? Because I always think if you start at the senior schools and we pick up the junior children, may think, hang on a minute, we then go in catch now. Don't think I'll bother. Because it is a concern, I think, that all these children are aware. You know, it's okay us excluding them from school, but then what do they do with them? They're out there roaming the streets doing something.
Yeah.
I think we need a much bigger explanation. I was a governor at the school and I've actually been involved in exclusions, and I find it, I can understand sending children home, but I've been involved in 2 or 3 exclusions over a period of time, but they're not instant. There's a whole process that you go through to get through evidence and appeals and all sorts of things. So if they find somebody with a knife, I'd be very interested to know what the process is in terms of how do the police get involved. And the school still has a duty of care, isn't it? You can't abandon a child, open the gate, throw it out and close the gate again. I don't know. I would be very interested in the process. And I know you've done quite a lot about this, Jodie, and have you come across the fact that once they're caught, they're out and then they get sorted later? I can't believe they're sending children home. So, you know, you're talking about senior school, aren't you? They are only
Predominantly,
yeah.
Predominantly.
But they can't just be sending those home without contacting parents and getting parents. I mean, I can honestly say, you know, I've got an 8-year-old grandson that's had a problem and they've sent him home, but they haven't sent him home without me or his mum picking him up. So and I know he's only 8, so there may be a different level of control. But I think it'd be very interesting if we can actually find out what the process is. And I think also the point that's been made by Denise, be interested to see how difficult it is, an effort that's needed, and whether we can get it into other schools. Because how many are we talking about? If we're talking about North Warwickshire, we're talking about five senior schools, and it's not massive amount of schools.
What have we got? Addiston, Polesworth, Hartshill,
Kingsbury,
Nuneaton Academy.
Coleshill.
Nuneaton Academy is a big feeder school for Arley.
yeah, Nuneaton Academy, yeah.
There's 6 just.
But that's a Nuneaton controlled school, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
But well, presumably it's an academised, so
Yeah.
it's the Academy Trust, but presumably they're taking our students as part of our trust.
Do you know why they picked Hartshill to do it? Was there a major problem there that made them pick it out as is it a trial or it needed sorting?
There was a particular problem at Hartshill School, which is why a lot of work has gone in there. And I think this was around, concern around behaviours of young people being displayed at the school. And I think there was concerns about weapons as well, of which I think the initial work that they did there, it didn't actually identify many weapons, but obviously there's been a continual ad hoc process. I think it would definitely be worth looking and getting a summary about the process and what's going on. And in terms of other schools, what I suppose I do want to stress is that there is a mentoring project that's funded by Warwickshire County Council. It's definitely going into Hartshill School and some of the other schools within North Warwickshire, and of course like Nuneaton and Bedworth, but I don't know which ones for them. And that whole project is around mentoring young people around knife crime and the implications of carrying a knife. And on top of that, we've just had in May, we've had the campaign around what the implications of carrying a knife. So that's on the agenda all the time, and we need to keep on putting those messages out through social media. They put posters up within the school and different things, and then that's a continual drip feeding message about what would happen if you get caught with a knife and the implications of that. So I know and I'm with you, Jodie, that I have heard before that sometimes children carry a knife just for protection rather than necessarily intention to use it as well. So there's a lot of awareness raising needs to be.
It's what our young people tell us when you go to youth clubs and things like that, and you talk to them kind of openly, and you say, I don't want you to tell me, but what situation would you perceive that? And they will always say, because you've got to get them before they get you. And it's that attitude. And I think that once the knives are in school, we've already got, part of the children that have been suspended on a regular basis. It's difficult to get there. So they're already school refusing. So there's already a breakdown and the children don't want to go. When they do go, they get sent home. It seems ridiculous. And then added to that, they're saying, well, I don't want to go because they've got knives. Yeah. And then it's just compounds the issues. And it almost justifies, it's the cycle that you're talking about, it's breaking that cycle, and Denise was talking about, and stopping that down the spiral into everybody doing it to justify it because that person over there's that one, so I have to. And it's almost become an arms race.
I think this as
It
well.
becomes one step escalation becomes dangerous instantly.
Yeah.
I think it's just also again like clarity about which schools. So at the moment, this is giving us a North Warwickshire impression in terms of the data in the last quarter, which is absolutely fine. But one of the things I've asked the county analyst is if we can actually look at the exclusions of weapons and knife crime and bring that together in terms of localities. So we've got much better detailed information about what's going on.
Fantastic.
I'm just wondering what our future schools are going to look like, because I've got visions now of it being like going through airport security and all the kids having to have their metal detector.
Imagine all that steel work you'd be welding for them.
Don't you think though it's in peaks and troughs with schools and that? I don't know if it's the same. I grew up in a city, so it's going to sound awful, but that actually isn't unusual. But now it's probably worse. I don't know, but it is scary. But I know. What do you do? End up like America with security guards?
Yeah.
I believe Hartshill has got, so some of the families have been down there, they have got suited people walking around gardens.
Right, can we move? Have you got any more questions?
Later on in the report, I do. I've got quite a few. I'm afraid I'll try and do them in threes again at least.
Right.
Violence without injury in Arley, and just some more information around it. It says that there's 3 home addresses. This is something that we've brought before to say that there were specific families, especially seems to be younger girls, and their homes or their families' homes have been targeted. And kind of looking at whether we've got the intelligence yet to actually do something.
You talk about domestic violence and that.
No, it's not domestic violence. In fact, there's a note at the bottom that says, please note, domestic violence does not appear in this. It's young people targeting either their friends or people that are refusing to be their friends, and it seems to be a little bit of a coercive relationship.
Right.
So if you won't, I don't know, go and rob from the co-op, then we'll egg your house, seems to be the general narrative and kind of about that. And then about the antisocial behaviour, especially with the end of the off-road bikes. And I know I was sat in a parish council meeting in Annesley Common on last Tuesday, and there'd been an incident in the park, and there'd been 30 off-road bikes in the park. They'd called the police 8 times, or one member of the council called the police 8 times. It happened to be the night of the PCSO. Turned up to the meeting and just had this enormous, there's 30 bikes we've been calling all day. There was no police attendance. And it's kind of going back to that dob it in campaign.
Yeah.
And, when we have got people dobbing it in, there's no response. And it's not, people need to see the impact when they are dobbing it in, when they take those steps.
Brett Hall.
Yeah, Brett's Hall estate. So there were 30 bikes, and then throughout the meeting, we listened to off-road bikes screaming along Annesley Common Road past the council meeting. And again, there was no attendance and no support for the residents. And it was just, obviously we're kind of reading through a report saying this operation has stopped. And it's just, we do need to be able to take our green places back. And again, stop the downward spiral, kind of say, this is ours, and when residents need help and they do call the police, then I think there needs to be, ideally, a response.
Yes, on a similar subject. We have a substantial problem with off-road bikes within the woods. live in the area as well. And I actively encourage the local residents to call the police, and we get no response at all. And the argument's always been that they can't catch them on the bikes. But certainly where we are, they pull up in a van. So it wouldn't be too hard to just go to where the van is. And
Are they official green lanes or they're just tearing around in the woods?
they just tear around the woods in the park. And you always have the residents say one day there'll be an accident. And then thought now we've got this path that goes all the way around the park. They will ride on that, so they don't ride on the grass. And I've never been one, oh, there'll always be one day there'll be an accident. One day there will be an accident, I suppose. I mean, they're picking up, I mean, they're getting powerful bikes and they're going through the woods now at some substantial speed. They used to keep themselves onto the old mining part, the old slag heap and stuff, but they're now coming into the woods near the residents. And no matter how many times you call the police, we just do not seem to get a response. It doesn't seem to be taken seriously. And it's got to the point now where people don't use the woods and go in the woods in the at the weekends because it's just filled full of motorbikes.
Is it usually the light evenings? Will they be out there now tonight, for example?
No, it's usually weekends. So
Yeah.
it starts usually around about 12 o'clock on Saturday, and they're roaming around till probably some. They come in drips and drabs. They come from Nuneaton and then Birmingham, and they even pull up on my street. And I've taken photos and sent them off, and so they are they're walking through the park into the woods, and nothing. Doesn't matter how much information we seem to provide. We're persistently providing information and documenting it. Nothing is done. And I was like, I understand you can't, don't expect a helicopter to go flying over the woods. You don't expect people to go in on mountain bikes, chasing after them. But when they come in a van, it's all you've got to do is park near the van. Eventually, they're going to have to come back to that van, and they're going to have to,
Do you mean it's more like an event?
It's
They're
an event,
turning up
yes.
with a van,
Yeah,
And
tearing up, and then
Yeah.
loading the van back up and going
you turn
away.
the van
Is
to
it
travel.
dozens?
There was reportedly 30 in
Not-
Brexhall.
Yeah, not in Woodend. It can be two vans, so about 5 bikes each, and 10, 12 bikes roaming around.
Right. We had a problem up on the green lanes outside Ostley, which actually means they're in Leicester, they're in Ostley, they're in and out of Warwickshire. That's impossible to get a policeman there because you phone and they say, "Where are you?" And we're Leicester, and it goes on and on and on. But what I did get with the inspector to actually get Alison Wiggins, and she got the off-road bikes in. For 8 weekends, they came for a certain period of time in the area all around Ostley, and they went away. They must have not, possibly they went to Woodend. They're very clever. They've got good intelligence, haven't they? The
Yeah.
police are there. They'll bugger off somewhere else. And then they also did Baddesley and on the common there as well. So there are 2 or 3 400cc off-road bikes with officers, uniform, everything, and they have Section 59 people, and they chase it. But then it'll be Corley Rocks next time. It goes on and on and on. I am very disappointed that everybody's phoning and you're getting no response whatsoever. So can we pick that up?
We get that in Coleshill too, sorry. No,
Whereabouts the polls was today, Roy?
sorry, Coleshill,
Coleshill.
Coleshill, yeah. I went to a town council meeting. It's not this subject, but it's just general things like attacks, somebody attacking a woman in one of the streets. A gentleman came to the town council and saying, "I live near Byron Farm and I saw it and tried to keep him there, and nobody turned up. Police didn't turn up. And fly tipping, he caught people. And
Can we get on the fly tipping?
no, I'm just saying,
Yeah,
it's happening as
in a
the
minute,
police
because we've got a
angle of
big
it.
part of
It
fly
happens that they don't turn up,
Yeah, okay.
but for all sorts of things. That's
All
all
right.
I was trying to say.
Okay.
I've got 2 positive comments to make on
Good.
this.
Can I just get Julie to?
Yeah, just a couple of points. I think the police, I absolutely agree. I know, and I think they will also agree that they're not getting out as regularly as they would like to address the issues. I certainly know at Brexhall there's an issue with the fence being down, and that's going to be looked at.
Timing on the camera. There's a timing delay on the
In
camera.
fact, I know they're trying to get the camera sorted now. They are trying to get that camera sorted because Craig Marshall has been in contact with me about that. So yes, I totally agree. They know there's a real issue again with bike nuisance. They've raised it with me. They've also said where this funding comes available, can we look at that as an issue in ways in which we can try and address some of those issues going forward. So what I do want to stress is they're very much aware that they're not on top of the issues around bike nuisance in North Warwickshire. But what the other thing I think we need to do is report back when we are doing stuff, because I know they have prosecuted people, they have taken vehicles and motorbikes off people, and the information that has been shared with me is that it is often people outside of the area coming in vans and using locations within North Warwickshire. So again, I think one of our things we need to do is get better information about sharing when we do take action. So maybe the police share it on their websites, but we need to be doing a bit more maybe as the community partnership.
It's like fear of crime and perception, isn't it? If they're not going to turn up, and listen to what Owen's saying, I just cannot believe that dozens of phone calls not turning up.
They did have, and I don't know if it was this weekend just gone or whether it's this weekend come in, but they were planning a whole weekend at all the at certain times of different hotspots. So I know in this month they are dedicating a weekend to look at the bike nuisance.
And how can we get feedback off of that?
So I will follow up with the sergeant.
Two positives, come on.
Yeah, we welcome the 20s Plenty trial, which is about to take place in Arley, and the school parking initiatives. And I was just wondering if there's going to be community involvement in any of those, because I know that there's been
It's quite
huge
wide ranging, it's not just up there.
Oh, it says North Warwickshire is going to pilot 20s Plenty to take place in Arley.
Yeah, and it is going to happen, but have you not seen the map?
No.
It's not just up, going straight up past the school,
Okay.
it is getting in and around by the pub. And
Okay,
back to the school.
I've got a list. I posted it on Facebook, and there's everybody in Arley said, "Can you do my road? Can you do my
Well,
road?"
I'll send you that. I'll send it to you because it's
But I know I've worked in other areas whereby they've got the schools involved, and the kids have drawn like the snail signs, and there's been leaflets through the schools to say, 20s Plenty. And
aren't they?
sorry,
The bollards are going into that.
they've gone in today. I've got a photo of somebody parked on the green verge behind them. I'll show you later.
Right.
And the same with the parking incentive. I know that we've done some work on kind of community organisation where we've identified like a pub car park up the road. So, which are happy to have kids dropped in because obviously the pub's not open or busy at those times. And then kind of assisted walking schemes between them. So I wondered if there's going to be any involvement with the schools or the parents or the PTA associations to
Again, I can't
tackle school parking.
parking.
That's okay.
Have you got any clue about that in terms of compensation?
No, I can pay. I can raise with Faye Y. Is it Y or something at Warwickshire County Council and just ask for any further details around that. But I'm not aware myself.
No, okay. Get back to you on that one.
Jen?
Sorry, all right.
Sorry. I spoke to one of the parking wardens in the town, one of the CPE wardens, not the car park wardens. And they said, because I raised an issue about Race Meadow, the parking down by Race Meadow. Have you got any powers around there? And so as far as they're concerned, they are having an ANPR car, which will just be able to drive by the schools, and then people get the tickets in the post, which he said will make us far more efficient on looking at schools. And as I say, that wasn't from the hierarchy, that was from the guy on the ground. He said that, they're looking at an ANPR car, which, as I say, that his words, they'll drive by and you'll get your ticket in the post, which will make them, more efficient. And I think that is probably one of the key things, because it's coming from the guy on the ground.
Yeah.
It's not the ones that are overseeing it. The guy that's there doing it, he's and it, to me, it sounds a good idea that if they just get one drive by, they could probably do 7 or 8 schools in an evening, and you only got to do it so many times, and people.
Yeah, you only get done once, don't you?
That's it. They'll learn.
Anybody got any other questions on that?
I had one more.
We have wandered about a bit. Carry on.
I had one more later on. And the Police Chief Commissioner, obviously, it's disappointing that we haven't received the £8,000 funding, especially when all of our antisocial behaviour issues, we've got Arts Hill, Arley again. Arley features massively in all of these reports, Atherton and Kingsbury, and I wondered whether it was about time, and we haven't had a chat for a while, it might be worth inviting him to come and join us for a.
Which
meeting to
£1,000 are you
discuss.
referring to, I think?
Page 1472. Unfortunately, the Safer Community Rural Partnership Officer was not funded. And I know that unsocial behaviour doesn't directly come into this role, but it was something that we were hoping to support the kind of rural nature.
So if they're not funding that, if we wanted it, we'd have to fund it, I take it.
Okay, can I just come back on that one? I have spoken to the Police and Crime Commissioner, one of the members of staff this week, because I have raised concerns that North Warwickshire has received the least amount of funding it has in the last 3 years. So I think I documented it. It was 32,000 a couple of years ago, and now we've got down to 8,000. I have been told that we can make another application, but not for a paid member of staff, but up to £15,000. So that is something that I can pull together some work on, but it's just focusing on our priorities and
Would that £15,000 be used for
one of the
advertising, campaigning?
Well, it's got to meet the Police and Crime Commissioner, the Police and Crime plan. So I need to go back and have a look at the objectives. But I kind of want the application yesterday, really. So
That's something I complained about. You find out on a Wednesday that you've got to have it in by Tuesday next week. It's crazy.
yeah.
And that's happening far, far too often.
So I will review the kind of things that we were looking at when we made the last applications, and I will look at our priorities, and also follow up conversations through the problem solving and antisocial behaviour meetings to make sure that any application we make is appropriate and comprehensive, really.
Because
I don't want to miss out on that 50,000.
Well, another point I was going to make, they asked, when I was at the last meeting, he wanted £5,750 from each district to pay for a prevent officer, which he'd funded before. And the prevent officer last year did 1,400 different events, dealing with groups, etc., which found quite a lot, I thought, with anyway. They also made the comment that he hadn't come to North Warwickshire. So why do I want to give him £5,750? What he then said was, you need to campaign to get him to come, or pitch so that he can come to see us. And what I was going to ask this committee tonight was, do we want to spend that £5,750 and whether we can get it from the budget? You're going to ask that question.
not about that specific, but yeah, if you look at our statistics, we're recording some of the worst situations in Warwickshire and on the lowest funding. And then we're being asked to fund things which aren't directly benefiting our residents. I would have a serious issue.
And you took
Spending-
that the Police and Crime Commissioner's funding or police funding?
Well, if we're getting the Police Chief Commissioner's funding cut, we're obviously dealing with a majorly challenging situation. And then we're being asked to support other areas.
They tell me we get a reasonable share based on per capita, and that's how they treat us effectively.
I do understand there is an argument per capita, and there's also an argument about what level of council tax are paid in this area and all sorts of other things, but surely it should be relative to the need as well. And you can't let one area's crime spiral out of control because less people live there.
But I've got it written down somewhere from the police inspector that resources have been cut in the north because it's a low crime area.
Okay.
And I've got that in writing, which I'm going to use when I see her in a week's time.
Excellent.
Because they're not.
I don't think I'm supposed to have it, actually.
Well, yeah, because we're not turning up, it's not getting reported. Nobody phones it in anymore.
They're not turning up.
Nobody phones it in anymore because nobody turns up and everybody goes, what's the point? So
Just coming to that point, I think this goes back to some of the things that we've been talking about. Really, it doesn't cost much to have a police car drive through an area, and just driving through. Like we've noticed crime go up in the village since the police stopped parking on the car park. It costs them nothing to sit there for half an hour, do a bit of paperwork on an iPad or whatever they do, because that's what they used to do, and drive off. It costs more to not have that police car turn up half an hour. It does to have a couple of bobbies keep coming out investigating a few of the petty crimes and some of the car break-ins and house break-ins that happen. And I think this feeds back into something to talk about knife crime and getting them when they're older and talking to the younger brothers and sisters so they don't take. It's the visibility that we're missing out on, isn't it? That seems to be the thing we seem to miss out. It's just general visibility as well.
Yeah.
That's it with the.
I do apologise. There's been a news story come out this week that Arley, again, is headlining in that we have the most unsolved burglaries in Warwickshire.
I don't think that's Arley, that's North Warwickshire, isn't it?
Well, the news story that I've got says Arley. It is a photo of driving into Arley that says we have the most unsolved burglaries.
I read it as North Warwickshire.
You read it as North Warwickshire, okay?
Yeah, it
The
was there was a
photo-
zero finding, wasn't it?
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the photo is
It's
you
one of
Arley
these
driving in.
statistics,
It's just-
statistics and bloody statistics. You can prove anything. But when you look
But
down
apparently,
into it, it was, in my opinion, it was North Warwickshire.
okay, there you go.
Chair,
Yes, sorry.
that's okay. I mean, we're all sitting here discussing all this tonight, and it's saying that North Warwickshire's got the most of this, North Warwickshire's got the most of that, but we can't get any funding. I'm just wondering, who does make the criteria? You know, is it just North Warwickshire that doesn't make the criteria to get this money? Who makes these decisions? Because I was actually speaking to our crime commissioner a few weeks ago, and he always says to me, Denise, how's Atherstone? I said, same as it was 12 months ago, we've got no police. And he knows what his response is going to be, bless him. And I was just saying about, we've had a big spike down on our industrial estate where they're breaking in and they're actually just emptying the vehicles. And that is a lot of money at this time, especially how much fuel is. And he said, oh, if there's anything like this, he did quote how much money he'd got. So that's one of the things. But one of the other things was, over the Jubilee, now I shouldn't think there was many villages or towns that didn't have something common, but we had not got one police or PS, what's the PCSO in North Warwickshire, we hadn't got one. And it just happens that there was two police from Nuneaton and Bedder found out that we hadn't, and very nice gentlemen. We bought them a Costa coffee for them to walk around the town with, and I think they actually went around those places. Now, the busiest time where, you know, there could have been something, look, wasn't, I think we only had one incident, but we hadn't got one in North Warwickshire because it was a bank holiday and I don't believe that there were combat holidays. So, it is a bit of a worrying time.
I actually met them as well. They said they'd come from Nuneaton and was going through Atherstone, and there was on to Polesworth, then on to Coleshill, and there was just like doing a route, just the two of them.
Yeah.
The one from this.
Isn't the decision on funding made within the PCC group themselves? They make that decision. You bid for it, it's their decision.
Yeah, you bid for it against their criteria, and it's their decision how they assign the
Do
funding.
we get feedback if we get told no?
Well, I've asked for a breakdown per district, across the county, for a feel for how much funding has gone into each of the, in each location. I haven't yet received that information.
Well, Alison Wiggins wrote and said, because it's generally a rural area, refers to North Warwickshire, but I'm now talking about my part, which is all rural. And they said it is a known low crime area, and so we have reduced resources to support elsewhere, and we can't have that.
I mean, these applications go in through the Police and Crime Commissioner office, so Alison's not actually involved with that kind of work. But I know what you're saying. But yeah,
But tell that to the businesses that will lose all the
I
diesel
understand
fuel.
that. But diesel's been stolen. I've had it when I used to be an operations director. I had it nicked all the time. You had to be on top of it all the time.
It's like liquid gold now, though, isn't it?
It is. It's best part of two because they can't get red diesel. Everybody's got to use £2 a litre. It is. And like you said earlier when we were in the room earlier, lorry the other day had 400 quid nicked out of one lorry. But you take a big Arctic, it's 1,000 quid coming out of that. And you can't, even with the electrical equipment and everything they use to take it, you can't nick it in 5 minutes. You've got to be there and thereabouts all the time. But you can't expect the police to patrol every industrial site all the time. Yeah.
Chair, can I just come back on that? And this is a case, what's happened is there was an incident in Atherstone where they was taking, I believe it was diesel out of a lorry, and somebody must have come along, so they made a quick dash off, left the pipe, and it went into the river. This thing.
And Jodie, any more questions on that?
No, hold on, thank you very much.
Joe, your provision, just as an observation in relation to that funding point, the PCC has a responsibility for a more strategic approach, and obviously things like funding for particular projects, etc. I don't know if it's possible to seek a sort of breakdown of where that ends and the operational level comes in, because PCC doesn't make operational decisions, and therefore I don't know if there's anything that we could then or request is targeted to those responsible for operational decisions. If they have some resources, that they can allocate them within our area, or or within particular parts of the area that have those issues. So I don't know if there's anything that can be done on that basis, because it may give, obviously, it's important to follow up the points you're following up, but it may give another tactic, if you want to call it that, to be able to call on resources and possibly get something more. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, I had a discussion. What's this exercise called? Hydrax. They're using that as an excuse, in my opinion. I don't know how many officers. I know there's officers from all over the country down up at the fuel depot, but they are put a lot of officers into it. But they still have to do the work. And I can refer back to my working life. I used to run 20 factories. I had 3 factories at one stage, 24/7. If people didn't turn up, other people had to replace them. You still have to keep going, otherwise we'd have gone bust. And I don't see that in the police. Sometimes I see the police not actually filling in when they need to.
I think when we went to the police and crime panel last week, that Philip Second quite clearly said the funding is there for all of the officers that are needed.
Yeah.
He said there is no funding is not available for the officers. And I think we're all very parochial because we obviously know our own areas. And the Kingsbury one was one of the items that was said, that it just stripped everybody from everywhere, and they was all located at Kingsbury. And I mean, the other side of the coin is that as we speak now, our police, I'll say warranted officer, he's on a responsive job now. He's not doing what it says on the box. That is the copper for Atherstone. He's working somewhere between Rugby and Coleshill on the responsive teams.
Yeah.
And as I say, Philip Second quite clearly said that all of the funding is there, but all of the officers, well, I'd like to see where they are.
Yeah.
If there's 1,100 officers, where are they? Because certainly, as we've all said here, we ain't got any of them, or we ain't got many of them. Where's the 1,100?
Right.
Just thinking about that, and there's obviously a disconnect, because when you talk to the officers, they are rushed off their feet, and they, we talk to our PCSOs, we talk to our safe and neighbourhood committees. I regularly kind of drop in around Coleshill, kind of speak to the officers there, and they are absolutely jammed, rushed off their feet, doing whatever it is that they need to be doing. And they will happily say, I don't have the capacity. So if we're being told that all the officers are there, and yet repeatedly residents are saying, I phoned and they said they've got no officers, that there's a disconnect between what the top believes is happening and what the people on the streets and the police officers delivering the service are actually capable of doing. So we need to kind of get to the bottom of that disconnect, really.
Is that a question we are able to ask to the BCC? Where are these 1,100 officers located? I mean, have we got 1,000 backroom staff and a few at the front?
I doubt it.
Well, we don't know. There certainly doesn't seem to be many of them.
No. So just to pick up on that, thank you, Chair. Every officer I've spoke to that's come to an end has come off the motorway and been pulled off a motorway police officer. Never get a local, and it's always people say, "Oh, well, I'm actually from other side of Birmingham." Well, actually, I'm from other part. Literally, it's like I'm part of the other part of the country. I'm here on Condon.
There must be Warwickshire. You're saying they're from other constabularies?
Yes, yeah. One or two times I spoke to them. Yeah, I mean, most of the time they've been off the motorway. I mean, I know it's probably the closest way they can pull an officer from, but we don't get one of our officers because they come in and we've got a few CCTV cameras in the village, and they don't know how to get footage of them, and footage has been lost because it's on a 24-hour loop and so it's recorded over. And they look at the camera and they go, "Who owns that?" And they don't talk to anybody. I mean, the locals know. and they make a note of it, and they drive off. And I can't cite the exact case now, but I've rang up before and said, "Oh, where did the footage?" I think, "Oh, my dad rang up, so where's the footage?" And then, "Oh, they didn't pull it off because they didn't know how to get it." So without having that local knowledge and a local officer and someone from the area, you can't even gather the evidence of crimes. You know, they turn up, and that's fair play, they turn up and they do the best to beat a few bushes and get a few in, you know, but the actual evidence is lost.
Yeah, okay. That's
I
noted
think,
that.
through you, Chair, I think one of the other key things that when you're saying about you ringing up for officers, you said there's about 30% of the calls that just fall out, that people get fed up of waiting and
Yeah, I think they said on 101, the average time's 18 minutes.
something, yeah.
But they're now dedicating a group dedicated totally to 999. And then because up till now, all officers we've received either the 999 and the 101, and the 999's kept dropping up the system. That's why the 101's automatically. But now they're going to have a dedicated 999 team, which seems to make sense to me.
Yeah.
But one of the things I didn't get the chance to ask him the question, but I wrote it down, that he said you can report it now online.
Yeah.
But he did say that while the operator's on the phone, then they'll pick some up offline. So which means that if you report it online, they automatically go to the back of the queue anyway.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the name of that. Can we get that out on the system? Because, like I said, they're encouraging people to use online rather than use the phone now.
As I say, he did say, didn't he, when the 101 officers or 101 call handlers weren't busy, they then look at the online stuff.
Well,
So that naturally, in mobile, says that if you report it online, you automatically go to the back of the queue.
I hope they're better at answering emails than I am sometimes. Because some of them right, any more on that? Because Jodie, come on, you've got to have another one.
No, well, I can find more. I've only skipped through about half, but I was quite happy to move on to
I was going to
one.
make a note here about reoffending of rates. I don't know how we can actually influence reoffending rates and what they can do. I mean, it's a whole debate about crime and punishment. If you don't punish people, then it's worth reoffending. You know, but that's another debate. But consistently around 17%, and it's below the county average. I don't know. Do we know any reoffenders?
I'm going to say, you're going to walk down Long Street.
Not that are currently out. No. I know a couple who
I
are.
remember you saying that in a council meeting.
Yeah.
Once everything's gone good because we know they've been locked up.
That's exactly how it is in Atherstone. We've got one shoplifter and he was inside. So
And the other one that we spoke about
Statistics
earlier,
like that.
because that some people said perception of crime. Are the lights still? I know you, Mark, you said it. Are the lights a problem? Do we want to put a campaign in against lights? Should we get a real costing? Because the great majority now is LED. That would have reduced the cost completely.
A costing would be nice because again, it's perception. I know some people can argue that less crime, happens in the dark or whatever, but it's just like this diesel fuel thing. They waited until the lights went off.
Well, do we wait until Hartshill's year is over and we can actually see that everything got better? Or does COVID in the past 12 months skewed all the numbers anyway?
again, being very parochial, in Atherstone, we are an area of shift workers. And, obviously it's throughout the area, but if you look at the industrial estates, they're all shift workers. And one of them shifts every day is going to be going in and coming home in the dark. So different areas may have different views on it. And it may not be a constant view over the whole of North Warwickshire. It might be some that say, yeah, we like the lights off at night. But when you look at the specific areas, there may be specific needs for, as I say, looking at our industrial estates, they are primarily 3-shift operations, which, necessitate people going and coming from work in the dark.
You've hit on one of my favourite topics. It's, absolutely, NHS, nurses, doctors, shift working into and out of hospitals. We have a lot of Ocado workers, a lot of Lidl that are in early stock shelves. We had a woman leave her home, fall on a curb, dead simple, but it was 3 o'clock in the morning, broke her ankle and was stuck there in the dark because she couldn't get any help, and I've heard of cars going off roads and they can't find the casualties in the cars because it's dead black and it's, they can't even find where the cars left the road. So absolutely.
But it would be dead black in the most of the area because there are no lights at most of the county.
But these were, on the sides of roads and other places that were quite local to the towns. These were within our villages and within
But I
our
can go
towns.
from your house to Longley and not see a light. For most of the
Absolutely,
way.
yeah. And I understand the lanes are different, but these are in the villages. So we watched the car leave the road, couldn't find the casualties. So
I still think it's just that perception. If the lights are on, you feel a bit safer. You can see what's around you. So that's why I'm
Can I just move on a bit now then? Anybody?
Just one very last. One of the things that was suggested is at night leave 50% of the lights on. So at least there's something.
Yeah.
So we can go back and ask the question because at the moment Hearts are all paying for it. County have no intention of putting on at this stage. Shall we go back and ask for a costing of what it is? Would your residents be willing to do what Hearts are doing? Pay for
You don't
it?
know. You don't know. If it's going to cost half of nothing, I would say most people will say, yeah, I'll pay a penny a year.
I think it's cost about £11,000 for them, or something like that.
But when you look at the £750,000 that they said that it did cost for the normal lights, now they're all LEDs, and an LED will run off a bike dynamo almost.
Yeah.
So that they take almost nothing.
We'll go through. We'll ask that
So,
question then.
You know,
Can we get?
we wouldn't expect them to come back and say it's going to cost 600,000. I'd be looking and say it's your £500,000, your £750,000 is now 50 grand or something like that.
Yeah.
It's come down a significant amount.
Can we get staggered quotes? So for 50%, 20%.
I think
Let's
through
see
you,
what they're-
It would be interesting.
the one I did approach that a few years ago, but when they do the lights, if you look at them, there's a few that's got an aerial on the top, and that controls the zone.
Yeah.
So they can't turn everyone on. But
Well, ask the question then.
That controls a zone.
Partnership plan. Anybody got any questions about that at the moment?
Is that fly tipping?
Item 5 on page 10.
So the partnership plan it's the all the priorities set out in the strategic assessment. So some of the key things have been updated and contained in the report, and the rest of it's just documented basically.
Problem solving meeting update. I mean, that was already chaired by Alison Wiggins. What we need from the meeting are some outcomes, and I don't necessarily see any outcomes coming from these meetings. There's a lot of waffle. Perhaps,
I think with the problem solving meeting is where a problem is identified, there's going to be a plan in place to deal with it. So obviously fly tipping we'll come on to in a moment. What was flagged at one of the last meetings was the county analyst had identified that deliberate fires seems to be maybe an emerging issue within North Warwickshire, and it's something just to keep a watching brief on. So
in any specific area.
I was trying to think.
Pick that up.
It was because it was reported by Warwickshire Fire and Rescue, and it's kind of household stroke construction waste, and one of it was 3 loads of rubbish all over the road. They said it was a substantial amount, but I can't think what the location was on that. I can follow up, but it was just to watch this space a little bit on where those tips are taking place, because one of the maps that Alison provided in the meeting looked at certain locations, and you can see them on the major road networks. So like our M42s, our M6s, they're off of those kind of major roads. So that was really useful to actually see a visual map of where things are taking place. But I can follow up and find out a bit more on that. And then the other 2 things are domestic abuse, which was highlighted in the performance report, and we're suggesting we need to do a deep dive in terms of why we have high levels of continual domestic abuse in North Warwickshire that doesn't always turn into referrals. So people aren't getting the support that they need to be getting, basically. So we're suggesting we need to look at that in more detail and get some more detailed information from the analysts. It is increasing across the county, so it's a county-wide national issue. But obviously we need to get on top of it in North Warwickshire and find out what more we should be doing to address the issues. And then I think you've all alluded to it in terms of problem solving. We're also looking at antisocial behaviour. Again, we've got quite a lot of nuisance youth across North Warwickshire at the moment. Quite a number of areas here up at Down Hartsell and Arley and Kingsbury at the moment are particularly key areas. Sometimes it's criminal behaviour, and when it's criminal, we can often look at addressing it, whether that's through parental contracts or individual powers on the individual. However, there seems to be a lot which is really not criminal behaviour, it's nuisance behaviour, and that's more difficult to deal with, except for getting interventions into that community and trying to divert those kind of behaviour.
That's a lot of that abuse, though, is because they've got nothing else to do, isn't it?
Yeah, mulling about, I call it.
Yeah.
I won't say I was the best young man when I was.
No comment. We've just had some fairly significant interventions in Arley around the criminal aspects of our troubled youth, let's call them. And I think because of that, it's kind of taken a backseat, and I think that the nuisance behaviour is also reduced. I think that kind of supporting the families to address the behaviour of the kind of higher level ones. And I don't think it's something that's ever been addressed before in this way. I don't think we've ever had an intervention like this, but I believe there's several APCs in place to kind of deal with some of the maybe ringleaders, and actually the rest of the kind of youth population seems to have almost sigh, as they've kind of relaxed a little bit and they don't have that level of stress on them, and there's no expectation to do this or do that or to be with the ones that were kind of ringleading it. So I do think that some of that nuisance behaviour is because they were kind of in peer groups who were getting away with it. And I think that now that, it's been a really successful intervention so far. And yeah, I think that there is a lot. I'm not saying it's all gone away and it's all fixed and it's all beautiful and sunny. But I do think that it's like having adults involved on the scene to support the parents to kind of bring an incentivisation in there to make better decisions has been quite successful, and the knock-on effects are that our nuisance behaviour is reduced.
Chair, can I just come back in on that one? Because I know they were doing a lot more visible patrolling, both in the car, and they were hoping to do some on foot. Do you think that has?
I haven't seen the patrols as much, and I haven't had many reports. I know that initially when you said it, I think I saw it the next day. I was like, oh, there we go. I haven't noticed it since.
Okay, because that is where at the problem solving meetings they'll discuss and they'll say, well, this is what we're going to do.
It'd be really nice to get them to catch that and to know, yes, they've been through 15 times, or yes, they've been through. And I obviously understand, resources are stretched, and if they've got a Kingsbury or if they've got something else on, absolutely, they shouldn't be driving through my village. They should be doing what they need to be doing. But yeah, it would be nice to capture that and to actually know how many times they've been through or how often that's happened.
Well, and the other one I was going to mention here was the antisocial behaviour powers, and there's the list there of civil injunctions, criminal behaviour. So it's working, and we're doing stuff. And I'm told things like injunctions are working. The mad driving all around it can't work completely, because I noticed that the county is spending about £500,000 on average speed cameras to reduce another lot of antisocial behaviour. We've already covered community safety grants.
Could I? Sorry.
Yeah, well, go on.
I was just going to comment on the powers that they've used for antisocial behaviour, but I think the disconnect comes that when we look at kind of 2021, we've got 400 violence with injuries, 167 domestic abuse flags. And if you look at the actual quantity, there's 1,000 people or 1,000 incidents of violence without injury. And then we looked at how many times the other social behaviour powers have been used. And we're looking at 14 ABCs, and the numbers aren't adding up. So, we've got kind of thousands of people, or thousands of incidents, but we seem to only have tens of powers being used.
That's
and obviously
probably
there's other powers.
there are,
being used as well.
are those thousands of reported incidents, or
Well, I'm assuming we've got the
but
figures that must be
nobody could have turned
reported.
up? That's the problem.
I'm assuming if it's on our tables that it's been properly logged.
Which page are you on now?
I was flicking between the table that you were referring to
Yeah.
and the performance reports.
Right. Any more questions on that? Because I'm just going to. Are you going to? I'll have to get the cane out where you're concerned. I was going to look at this list here. There's lots of. It's been discussed further back, and there are pages and pages of it. Do you want to carry these pages, or do you want to get into?
I think for me, they are a summary of everything that we've discussed so far.
That's okay. The other thing I was thinking, and I don't know if it could happen, and we sat at a meeting where they went through that, and that is, in my opinion, is too difficult without explanation sometimes. There's lots of numbers there. And has everybody looked at it and understood it? For example, serious acquisitive, I can't even say that word now, crime, looking on residential burglary, etc. Acquisitive. When you start looking at these numbers without an explanation, they're just numbers. So is it possible to get, I can't think of the girl's name now from the county.
Sarah Parker.
Yeah, to Sarah Parker. Get her on and next time we have her, or when we can sooner, get her on the screen here and she can then go through it and she will take quite a lot of heavy questioning where that has come from.
She's really good at providing some clarity.
Yeah.
And the other thing that in times gone by when Robert provided statistics, we never had a 3-year average, and that's because obviously we're very much aware that the pandemic had a major impact on crimes, either going up or going down, which, depending on the type of crime it was. And so what they've tried to do now is with the data as well, is that you kind of have the yearly data and then you also have the 3-year average as well as the county. So I do appreciate you've got a lot of information there, capturing. I mean, the last lot has been for the year because it's Q4.
Yeah.
So it's the final part of the picture, really. But I think it would be helpful for Sarah to go through it and just to explain as well what's included in each of the kind of topic areas. Priority.
Can I just get Ray first? She talks about calendar year, not fiscal council year. So it is January to December, her numbers. It's not April to May.
Yeah, no, it
May
is
to April.
April to May.
It's just May to April.
Yeah,
So,
to March, to the end of
okay.
March.
So which I was going to look at, I think we talked about that a minute ago, because there's some numbers here that say 2021. Would that have stopped at December 2021 or
Would be December, wouldn't it? That's how you usually do Q1, 2, 3, 4.
yeah, but she's saying it's May to April.
Oh, right.
Hang on.
I just want to make sure if it's a calendar
March,
year.
so it ended in the end of March.
It's
Right.
financial year.
It's
isn't it?
Yeah,
financial
so
year.
it's the financial year. Okay, all right. Okay, any other questions on that? Ray?
Rewinding very slightly because we on ASB in Atherstone at the QE school there was somebody that was distributing I'll say offensive literature to the kids. They got an order that stopped doing it right outside the school gates, and it moved over the road. They got all the stuff together. The police did, and they put a lot of work into it. And in my opinion, the one that fell over, and I'm sure the police are saying exactly the same, is North Warwickshire Borough Council, because they put a pretty well cast iron case as far as they was concerned, but the Borough Council didn't want to take anything any further. So it's a two-sided coin that yes, we want their support, but they also want our support as well.
Douglas, ask you anything about?
Chair, I don't know of actually anything formal coming through. I know there was a couple of emails talking about potential options to deal with it, but I don't think anything ever came over in the way of evidence to us for us to assess in detail. I certainly didn't see anything.
I'll be careful what I say, obviously, but there was CCTV evidence that was downloaded by PCSOs, and the statements were made by the PCSOs. But
Did the police prosecute or not?
Sorry?
Did the police prosecute?
No, because it was they were looking for the environmental health to do it because of offensive stickers all around the town.
Right, okay. We'll take that offline and find out about that.
Yeah, as I say,
On that, we are looking into it, and it has been raised, but we are looking into it, and I think also there was the police. The police have other footage as well. I think on the footage that was provided, there was a technicality around what we could do in that instance. So I think the police said that they had also other footage. So we're going to look at that other footage as well. So
On the stats, I'm asking for it now. It's more just to make notes of maybe something to look forward into. Do we keep track of people that we make up looking at schools? Do we keep track of people we spoke to, children we spoke to at school, and as they leave school and potentially enter the criminal system with adults? To look at the interaction. So let's say little X child has been spoken to 14 times or something, and as they leave that school system, they move into sort of society. Do we track that data so that we can see if we do intervene at this age, do we have a positive outcome here?
can I say I'll come back to you? What I do know is on a case at the moment where the young person has just turned 18, we are still following them, and they're working, which doesn't happen very often. Youth Justice are working with, and I'm not sure what the adult service is, but they're working alongside one another. But I think that's something that I need to come back to you on, because I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would be a bit unfair question.
Yeah.
So, which is,
So
it's
when they leave the under 18s and when they become an adult.
Yeah, it's just it's just interesting if we're trying to intervene at the school level, it'd be nice to see if we are actually having outcomes as they become adults, that's all. And as we come to the end of an academic year, if we're not doing that, it's something we should probably try to do, and keep it going forward, especially as we're doing these sort of schemes, just looking at the data.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one.
Last one.
Delighted to see a fall in KSIs. Obviously, the 2 fatalities are tragic and still not acceptable on our roads. My concern about the drop in KSIs is that we don't seem to have addressed any of our dangerous junctions or any of our dangerous roads. And I just desperately hope it's not a fluke, just luck or in just sheer chance. My concern is that it is, and we're still not doing enough
I agree with
to
you.
safen our streets.
I asked that question because one of the things that the PCC said, but the aim is to reduce KSIs by 50%. And what are you going to do about it? Well, we're going to put advertising, all sort, drink driving, all those sort of things. But I'm going back to the top 5 accident spots in Warwickshire are in North Warwickshire.
Yeah.
And some are over for Longley, Green Man Crossroads, all those still exist. And although they're on the plan, the Green Man Crossroads, I've been a councillor for 12 years, and the Green Man Crossroads has been on the list, and it's still on the list. And there is a plan to do with it. Woodford Lane. And so all we can do is we can campaign for it and push for it, but it's not an aspiration is not a solution. Because that's how it seems to me with the public plan. Okay, any more on that? Because I'm going to move on to fly tipping. So this is item 7, fly tipping progress, that the members note the contents of the report. Have you all read the report?
Just take a vote on accepting.
All right, sorry, I need to go back, and can I have a proposer that we note the last item? And can I have a second for that? Are all in favour? None against, thank you. So, anybody, any questions or comments about the fly tipping? Hello, Jodie, who are you?
It's a very thorough report. I think it's been really well put together. I would love to see better camera footage, especially on the top spots. I think it gives a really good insight into, I think, the travels of the people. I think, you know, those key junctions again, those major highways, the hot spots that we've got. I will raise concern again that identifying hot spots is just moving the problem around the borough. And if we tackle one hot spot, then we create another one. But I do think that the only way to actually get the prosecutions that we need to deter people properly is through cameras, and as decent cameras as we can get, whether they're reading number plates or hidden cameras, or I believe there was a new phrase used that I can't remember. Storm, where you hit an area and there's loads in one specific area.
I know we
I
had.
think that's the only way that we're actually
I
going
know we had a few cameras nicked a while ago.
Yeah.
So some of these covert cameras are not well hidden.
Not very covert, no.
Yeah.
And I realise we have to put a big yellow sign.
But one of the questions, that's why I asked that question about when is 2021. Did it finish in April or does it finish last December? Because that's half this year, isn't it, so far? Or more.
So I think I believe quarter four report finishes on the end of March.
Right, okay.
That's what I believe. I can.
So this, the point we were looking at earlier, is reasonably up to date. There's only a couple of months since.
Yeah, excuse me, Chair, but on your fly tipping analysis, it says page 72, 3172, total number of fly tipping incidents reported between January 2019 and December
21. Well done.
Sorry, I thought you meant on the performance report. Sorry, I do apologise. Sorry.
Yeah, I was looking at that report there at the back where it says 2020. So that is December 21. So we've got so for the half year we have no details of anything for the half year.
Yeah, so sorry, Chair, just to come in on that, yes, we'll have information on what we've recorded internally. When we asked the county analyst to have a look at this work for us and to give us a more in-depth picture in terms of what's going on in fly tipping in North Warwickshire, I think that was the date in which we passed the information over to them to do this a piece of work. But in terms of incident numbers, we will still have all that information internally.
One of the reasons I asked that is because a couple of weeks ago, I tried to go to Lower House Farm and got told, and I had to book, and I phoned at 9:15 on the Monday, and I got told I couldn't get in there till 10:15 on the Thursday. And then, having said that, Ray then checked to see if he could book for tomorrow, and he could have booked all day, couldn't he?
All day, yeah.
All day. So it's an issue. But I then went to Lamp in Ashby because for me it's not so far away. But it meant if people turn up and think they can drop it, is there a risk that they're just not going to drop it and they'll drop it up the road the other side of Wood End, for example? So I wonder if that's an issue, and I wonder if we can go back and ask them if they can, if we can actually make Lower House Farm open as it used to be, rather than have appointments.
Well, it's certainly something that we can raise.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where they're at in terms of changing their opening hours and stuff at the moment. It's certainly been raised.
Well, it was all COVID, but there's no COVID at the moment, is there? Or very little. Okay. Owen.
Yeah, just on the subject of the recycling centre, it's bizarre. It seems to be criminal almost that we can allow people to dump just outside of it.
Yeah.
And we could put a few cameras just pointing out from the actual facility itself. We don't require signs, and we put signs up to discourage it, but the permanent cameras with a good wide field of view. I know like they're not going to catch everything, but it's the idea is dumping just outside the facility where we could put permanent cameras in. I mean, it must be cheap, but I mean, as the fixed camera costs are about a decent one, a couple £100. And it's going to be cheaper than keep cleaning up the mess, isn't it, and dragging it back into the facility.
Yeah. So has anybody got any questions about fly tipping?
No, just looking at the maps, most of the ones I'd say in Atherstone and I can't find a map for them. I said, I don't think they've done one where the spots are there, are around the flats. And do you think some of this fly tipping is because they've not got gardens where they can dump the sofa or dump the washing machine until they can get it took away? I'm not sure how much it costs for the council.
£26 for
How much?
26 quid.
Each.
No, 6 items. 6
Oh,
bulk
Up to
items.
6 items.
That's,
They'll take you sofa, 2 chairs and a brick for the 20.
that's reasonable then, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you're avoiding 400 quid fine.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Can I just clarify, sorry, Chair, can I just clarify one thing? It's one of the things I think we need to do internally. Fly tipping is like, if there's bags beside bins, where it's all considered to be fly tipping. One of the things I think we need to look at internally is about how we decipher what I would call problematic fly tipping and what's maybe an extra bag beside a bin, because they're slightly different things. And I'm not saying it's not fly tipping because it's that bag by a bin, which we do find does happen around some of our flats that we have, there'd be extra bin bags out. So I think somehow we need an internal system that kind of, because obviously the maps could show that there's a bigger issue in one area than another, and actually it might be down just a few extra black bags where the other area might be horrendous fly tipping.
Thank you, because it looks
And so,
bad on
and
an
so we
area,
do,
doesn't it?
that is something I think, what I would like to say is that we know as a council that we haven't got on top of the issue over the last kind of 12, 18 months. It's something that needs time and effort and resources being put into. And I think there's been a number of different changes and there has been issues around capacity, but I do want to stress there has been a refocus and a reshaping internally of getting a fly tipping group internally together. Then also we've seen environmental health go, pushing through a few more prosecutions where they were low on staff and it was struggling with some of that sort of stuff. They're buying new equipment to make sure the interviews run more smoothly. So what I do want to stress is we know we've got an issue in North Warwickshire. We do want to get on top of it. It's probably our biggest environmental crime in the area. So, but I'm hoping that as a result of the new fly tipping group, that will actually extend that out to environment agencies and some of our other key partner organisations who can support us, like fire and rescue as well, because there is quite a number of fires linked to fly tipping. So we will work with our partner agencies to have a multi-agency approach to addressing the issues in North Warwickshire. And I think that's alongside having a camera solution and looking at hotspots. But what it might be as well going forward, it might be that we look at some of the powers that the police have to stop and search vehicles that are suspicious and carrying loads. And if they don't have the right licenses in place, they shouldn't be carrying those certain loads. So it's something that Solihull did and did a lot of work on, and they really stamped out fly tipping in the area. And it's something that I'd like to encourage that we look at that model and we look at how they made it successful and see if there's any possibilities in North Warwickshire.
Chairman, your permission, just to expand on that very slightly. On the first point, there is quite a difference, obviously, between an extra black bag next to a dustbin and, turning up at a field and dropping off a load of fridges or something like that. And there's some different legislation that can apply to dealing with it. And I think that the suggestion of breaking down those figures in more detail would be helpful, because then it's about how you target your resources. Because there's without going into the fine detail, there's a process for serving notices regarding how waste is collected, and there's that could deal with quite a few of those issues. Obviously, we don't know the exact numbers, but it's the sort of thing that can be separated out compared to the if you like, the almost professional fly tippers who are being paid by people to take waste. And so that's the first point, that it may show where we need to direct those resources, and things like the cameras are probably only going to be necessary in limited number of places. But the other point is regarding stopping vehicles, etc. We can have our own officers authorised to do that. However, there's limited circumstances as to where they can do it, and obviously finding them when they've got the vehicles in the right locations where we can do it is quite difficult, and perhaps it's another thing with joint working with the police, so our officers can be authorised to take part in the process. But if you haven't got that backup, you will find you're going to do it in a very limited number of places. It's something we can certainly look at.
So if we've got officers that could do that, are they going to catch people in the act?
Yeah, effectively, I say we can authorise. What I don't know is who is actually authorised here, and that's something we can look at. But I think it would have to be most effective, because we can't do it in all locations. If you don't have the police working with you, then it's pretty much a matter of saying, over there we can't do it, so over there we could do it. So it needs to be a targeted operation to be sure that our officers, if authorised, have the backup of the police, so they can, wherever the vehicle may be, the right person's got the power and can do it.
Okay. Another thing I've noticed here on 7.1, allocation of £50,000 towards addressing fly tipping was set aside in 2017-18. And to date, we've spent 24,550. I thought we spent about 80,000 a year on fly tipping. Is this a special fee that was put there?
Chair, it was before my time, but I do believe there was an allocated budget for fly tipping. I mean, whether one was waste on one's fly tipping, I don't know, but we can.
I'd like to know that, because fly tipping happens all the time, so you can't live on a sort of budget put together in 2018 and not spent it all. I would be amazed if we haven't spent it all, but I'd be interested. And I notice also you're looking for just a bit further up, cannabis related issues, and they've reduced slightly. Obviously, there's a lot of country folk for Longley, Crawley and Wishaw. They're obviously a little bit more relaxed out in the boonies. So, and when we find that, do we involve the police, or is it just rubbish at that stage? It's too late, no evidence or anything to be able to pick up?
The incidences can be reported from anywhere, so it could have been from the police who informed us of it. So I'm not sure in terms of how we capture that information, if it identifies where the source of the information was, but certainly the fire and rescue definitely inform us of certain bits of information. If they're out and they see something, they'll contact us. The same with the police. So in terms of who's reported it, I couldn't.
And the other thing I was going to say, listening to what Jodie just said, £25 for £26 for 6 pieces of. Could we advertise that better? Do you think if we made sure everybody realised that it is actually only half all your dining room and all the I think you should change all your furniture.
I thought it was more expensive.
Yeah.
I can check.
I know it used to be, when I first started on the council, it was about 12 quid, but 6 pieces, big pieces of furniture for 26 quid. It is not worth even driving it to the dump yourself, or even to the field round the corner. Sorry.
It's a very good point. And we've got the best adverts of the lot on the sides of the refuse wagons.
Yeah.
Because they visit every street every week.
It's gone up to £28 for 5 items.
28.
£28 for 5 items.
Even if 2
For 5.
Yeah, £5.30 for an extra one.
The trouble is, Chair, I know of someone that last year that made the booking with us, put it out, told to put it out on the drive.
Yeah.
The night before,
You got any?
just went. It just
Well,
went
Been known
Where
to
was that?
happen.
We're all taking stuff there.
this way.
I delivered my old suite to my son's house, and we had to rescue it before. The time I got indoors and come out again, it was halfway on the back of a truck when we got outside. So it does happen. You're right.
I've got a question about 711 about the funding. And from memory, I think it was a specific allocation to combat. So it was looking at the intelligence services.
But I'm amazed we only spent 24,000.
And it's kind of about that capacity, because it does refer to our lack of capacity, especially in environmental health. And with all this intelligence, we've got a massive view. The report is really thorough. It gives a huge amount of intelligence. But if we haven't got the capacity in our officers or in our staff to do something about it, if we are lacking, just the people, literally bums on seats, then there's no point us knowing where the hotspots are if we haven't got the people to buy the cameras and get out there.
Well, we need to know what hotspots are so we can react to them. And we have bought cameras, but perhaps we need to have a look at it and sit down with the officers in charge of it. My next question was how many prosecutions have we had and how successful?
The prosecutions are listed in here. Am I saying
6.
8? I think there's 8.
There's 8
and
pending.
6.
I don't think we've secured
No.
prosecution.
I
yet.
was
8 interviews under caution with 2 so far completed. I mean, this is since Sharon Gallagher's been interim
Yeah.
environmental health manager. So, you know, that has literally been a couple of months. And
Yeah.
so she has turned stuff around quite quickly in terms of, you know, working with our legal team and with our streetscape team to try and get on top of the issue. Often it is evidence, the difficulty is sometimes the evidence isn't quite there, and maybe we need to do some work maybe with the legal team about identifying what is needed to make sure that we can prosecute comprehensively going forward. But like I say, we are trying to find ways and means in which we can improve the way in which we do things. And, you know, I think it is a positive. I know it's small numbers, but it's a positive since the last meeting that we've got a new interim environmental health officer. We've got a number of interviews under caution, and we are starting to make some progress. Obviously, we want to see a lot more progress around that going forward.
yeah, I know, but I think Jodie's got a point there.
Yeah.
You know, I think we've got the one. If you get done for parking, you very rarely do it again, do you? Or you start behaving yourself. And if we can start advertising in the newspapers and on media that if you get caught dumping, it's going to cost, and there will be some element of stopping it happening.
So it's just a question. If you paid someone to dump it, you're liable as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
I think that's part of what the campaign needs to be as well.
Yeah.
And then do we have any prosecutions for that where someone's paid someone to dump? Oh, brilliant. That's worth.
Yeah, you've got a responsibility cradle to grave,
Yeah.
so you've got to make sure that the guy's got the right certificates to carry it, etc., etc. And you know for a fact if you give about 20 quid to get rid of a truckload, you know it's going up the road and going around the corner. Yeah. Okay.
So you should show, we had some took away by Ashley, took a photo of his licence so that if he dumped it, I had got proof that
Yeah.
I'd paid a proper waste carrier.
Sure, that's another issue around educating people around that, and it might be something we could combine, with advertising our own service, that for people to understand more about that. Because I think whilst the legislation's been in place for quite some time, it's something I don't think the average person on the street necessarily knows a lot about. So maybe it's something we should, if we can help educate them, they'll be less likely to perhaps go with the person who turns up with an unmarked van and do something for a few pounds.
Yeah.
Just on that, there was a prosecution, I think, in Philanthropy or thereabouts, where somebody had done that. And we have vans driving around the streets, just bonking their horns, so, got anything for scrap, anything, and just going around and taking stuff. And it's kind of very much culture to leave stuff out on the street and it just goes. And nobody really seems to ask where.
Yeah.
But somebody had asked somebody to come around and clear their garage out. They paid them. And they obviously took the stuff and then just dropped it, I think, in Coleshill. And there was identified material. So I believe she received a fine. And that ripple saying, oh my God, I've been fined, or my neighbour's been fined, and that kind of rumour spread from, out. And people were like, oh yeah, don't pay them. My mate's just been fined. And it just became an accepted truth. And I think that the way that we can get the message out is, yes, through advertising, but actually through kind of it's that consistent policy.
Well, I think we've got to be more bullish about how we put the message out there. Otherwise, it'll carry on. And I would like to see the work out there. Was COVID the problem, or were we kidding ourselves and letting COVID be an excuse? Because it doesn't seem as it's got any better. Any other questions on? Anybody got anything they want to say about the report in general? I thought
Very good report, Jim.
it is a good report, and I'm surprised that asbestos is not a major issue, especially when you consider a black sack full of asbestos can cost you a couple of £1,000 to get rid of it. So I'm
You could
amazed.
take 3 bags, 3 sheets, 3 metres to the tip. So you
How
can,
much?
3 bags, so 3 sheets.
Yeah,
So if you imagine a whole sheet, you can take 3 a year.
to the skip as
It's
an
got to be
individual.
double bagged and marked.
Oh,
and
it's got to be marked, yeah, I was
It's
thinking
gotta
most
be-
people are
and
not
they've got
supposed to handle it.
a terrifying bunker that you have to go
And
into.
I'm surprised at that, Chair, because normally if you handle asbestos, you've got to be licensed.
Took
You know,
they'll
certainly
take it.
Yeah.
buildings
If
down.
you're charging to handle asbestos, you have to be licensed. If you dig it up in your own garden, then you
I
have a
didn't know
choice of
that.
either to get somebody to come in and deal with it professionally. You are allowed to deal with it yourself.
Oh, okay.
But if you take it into the tip, it has to be double bagged in specific.
Well,
I've done it recently. We dug up a bit and just went, oh God, and it was a small bit. So I checked the ones. And you
Well,
must take
I
3
know
sheets.
from talking to Richard about some asbestos that was dumped down in Packington Lane, in Coleshill, and he reckoned it cost us the best part of, to get rid of 3 different loads, about 5,000.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a lot. Would have gone in the back of a pickup, so it wasn't a lot. So, okay, any other questions on that? Has anybody got anything else to say?
Happy
Because
to move it, Chair.
that's what I was going to say. You'll move it. Can I have a second for that? Okay. All those in favour? Thank you very much. And in that case, I think we're finished. Thank you very much for coming.